I want you to picture two people. Now, one guy has this super, super, super thick neck, and the other one has a teeny tiny pencil neck. Now, I want you to picture them and picture their physiques. Now, you will probably now there's probably some sort of confirmation sort of bias thing. When you picture the guy with the pencil neck, you probably see him as being really, really skinny, really undeveloped muscularity, and then when you picture the other guy, you probably picture him being an absolute huge mass monster. I was training neck in the gym, and I would just do this thing with a plate where I'm going like that and that and that, and I do the same sort of backwards where I'm doing that and that and that with a plate on the back of my head, and it got to a point where it became really, really boring and really difficult to load the extension, particularly like the one where it's on the back of my head. So I bought a neck harness, and the neck harness, I got a cheap one, and so I go to the gym, I start trying it out. And what happens? I almost snapped my neck. It was some sort of like spring sort of lack of tension escaping from like the chains. And it was the most awful feeling. It brought me so much fear. I realized this was a piece of trash. I took it home and I just threw it in the bin instantly. And after that, I never really hit neck extensions as often. Or really at all, I think, because the plates were just too difficult. And, when I first started, when I was a bit weaker, I was doing lateral flexion, right? So it's kind of like that sort of movement. And I was using plates. But as it progressed, it got so difficult to do because it just felt weird. Like there was not really a sort of flat surface to throw it on. And so this is actually quite a funny one. But I transitioned to doing this on an exercise ball, where I would literally just push into it, and I would try and do the same thing for neck extensions. Honestly, I don't think it got me anywhere, but my main movement, the neck curl, I got that up to 20 kilos for 20 reps. This wasn't like some sort of momentum jerk based thing. It's a very easy movement to improve on. Now I think my neck's something like 16 inches. I can't remember. I don't know. I think I have a big head or something, but it is 16 inches. And I've noticed something. I've noticed a really, really cool thing. The second you stop training your neck, it doesn't really get smaller. The rowing motions you do are actually enough to keep a sort of stimulus in to prevent the muscle atrophy. That is super cool. Now I actually have an actionable step for you, and I think this will end up being really, really important. I want you to pause the video, not yet, but in a second, and I want you to look at Chris Bumstead. Take a look at his neck. Now, earlier, it's a bit strange, right? Because I mentioned the fact that, the physique is kind of attached to the neck. And this guy with an incredible physique does have a bit of a pencil neck. So it is not necessary. If you get the Chris Bumstead level, they're going to see you in the clothes no matter what. But when you're a natural lifter, when you're someone who's starting, the neck is one of those huge things people do notice. The neck, the traps, the shoulders, to some certain extent, the arms. Those are like, wow, here goes Jim. Those are the muscles that need to be built for it. And so that's why we're focusing today on the neck and traps. The thing you want to focus on most is those flexion exercises. So that'll be the neck curls. I would literally just keep on going until you get to that 20 plate for 20 reps. If you're lucky, you may have a machine which can do neck extension. If you have that rare machine, do it. If you don't, I wouldn't worry about it. In complete honesty, you can do it if you want, but when it gets difficult, when you have to have more than one plate, it's just too annoying. Lateral flexion, this may sound a bit strange, I would not bother it at all. I just wouldn't bother with it. You can use resistance bands if you really want to, but it won't make too much of a difference anyway. It's a teeny tiny muscle. And so obviously the ideal scenario here is buying like a proper harness that can be attached to a cable machine and then doing 2 sets a week or something. But we have to worry about that sort of thing. So I want you to go hard, but obviously be safe. Have a spotter or self-spot or that sort of thing. When it gets too heavy, use your arms. Go to task failure. So that means you're not doing like length and partials on neck curls. Sounds absolutely disgusting. But the second you fail that last rep, that's your last rep. You're good. And that higher intensity is key with all training, but even neck training. I know that sounds a bit scary to some people, but it's not really something to worry about. And so neck training, I will admit, has a very, very important step before you do it. And that's, you gotta warm up, man. You gotta do some like neck circles or some like, so I don't know. And similar to how we've mentioned primer sets before, where you're just doing lighter weights for like a few reps to prepare your body for that sort of muscular action, do the same with your neck training. Make sure your body's primed to actually move it and knows the movement it's actually doing. Otherwise, we're having a bit of a higher injury risk. And so past that, the neck really, past 16 inches, it doesn't grow too much. And alongside that, there's some evidence out there talking about like sleep apnea or having a bigger neck. So I also don't think it's too worth it. And just because it won't grow too much, it's not like a priority anymore. So literally just remove the sets. If you need to, if you have the ability to, you can replace it with some sort of other muscle group, and you have now 2 fresh sets on like each of your back days or whatever you program it in, which you can utilize to get bigger arms or bigger shoulders or something, which is going to make a bigger difference than training your neck. And so I think that kind of shifts very, very nicely into trap training, because trap training is probably going to be like what actually carries you after that. And so people have this awfully wrong. See, everyone focuses on shrugs, right? Where it's like that sort of like movement, which is absolutely ridiculous, because the thing you actually need to do to build your traps is not that. You see, this sort of portion here is not built from shrugs. And that sounds a bit strange to people, but that's actually your mid traps. Your mid traps and your, like, there's a muscle called scapular elevate, or like elevate scapular, which basically is just the thing that like moves your shoulder blades up. And so when you want to build the upper traps, you got to do something called Kelso shrugs. Kelso shrugs. And Kelso shrugs are basically shrugs using an incline on a bench. When you do these, you're using the upper back. You're using the upper traps and also the mid traps and lower traps, but the entire trap is contracting. Because if you look at the actual way the muscles insert, it is like a diamond. Its purpose isn't to put up, its purpose is to bring the shoulders together. And that's what you got to do, man. So Kelso shrugs are going to be an absolute huge way of building it. But alongside that, there is another awesome thing you have to be doing as a requirement, and that is extremely flared rows. So normally, a lot of people are doing rows like this for their lats. You of course do it at a 45-degree angle. A lot of people like doing that. I think that's a must as well. But extremely flared when we're like this is purely your upper back. That's purely your traps. I say purely. Of course, there are some other muscles involved. We have to get semantical, but that's insane. We're growing those upper back muscles. And when you do this, there's an awesome thing you can do. Remember the Kelso shrugs we mentioned earlier? Well, we can actually superset these. I don't think it's really a superset. I think it's something called a mechanical drop set. I'd have to check. Regardless, it's all semantics to me. But after we finish those extremely flared rows, with the same weight, we can literally just, like, we're not really trying to bring the elbows back, but we can just kind of shrug it up. And we can do that to failure. And we'd only be able to get like 5 to 8 reps max in anyway. And this is going to be perfect, man. Of course, like all other training, we're trying to fail here somewhere in between 5 and 10 reps. If we get like 4 reps, it's fine. It's not going to be too bad. We only miss out like a teeny tiny bit. But we're trying to fail around there. We don't want to do a ton of volume. Scientifically, we can talk about how like muscle damage will be higher when we go to those higher reps, and there'll be more to recover from when we get less overall stimulus long term. But it's not even just about that. The burn you get when you train your upper back can actually stop you from having like a voluntary contraction. So we want to actually be able to get to failure potentially, especially with a movement like this, which is absolutely ridiculous. If you go above like 12 reps, it starts to feel like the meat is being torn off the bone. It is not fun. Well, it's actually quite fun, but it's not fun when you're trying to get to failure and you're not actually able to because of a sensation. That is not great. Why I started doing these, that would be what happened almost every single time, because I was still training in a little bit of a higher rep range, and I would do like incline dumbbell rows with like an upper back focus, and then after that I would go directly into those Kelso shrugs. And even before doing a single Kelso shrug, my back was already on fire. My back already felt like I was literally spit roasting it, and it was just being stirred and stirred around the fire for like hours. I would admit a lot of the sets stopped before failure just because of the sensation. And those Kelso shrugs you do after give you an absolutely insane bonus. So I'm gonna be real, that doesn't happen anymore, but it did for a while. I mean, the biggest thing that happened with my back training, which absolutely sucked, was the fact that I never used to use straps correctly. Like I was using them backwards, which actually makes it worse than not using straps. And so recently, when I started cutting, I transitioned into using them properly because I realized that I've been not using them incorrectly for like 2 years. And the second I started doing them, I literally added 5 kilos just like that to my like silver just instantly, and that's pretty insane. I'm not too happy about it, but my back is gonna like probably get a bit bigger in the cut, which I always expected, but that's kind of messed up. And so I want you to leave a little bit of a comment, and I want you to tell me the sort of way you're going to train this, the sort of way you're going to hit your neck and your traps, because I am just genuinely interested. Like I love hearing about this sort of stuff. There's also different exercises we can utilize, of course. We can use the bench, we can use the Smith machine, we can add some sort of chest support on like a machine. We can just, I don't know, do the standing barbell row. Like there's so many different things we can do, and I absolutely love seeing what other people are doing. And if I can, potentially helping them, especially if they leave a comment where they say they're doing something and they say what they have available to them, and they say their goal is pure hypertrophy. They don't care about strength. They don't care about the sort of visual aspect of doing a barbell row for some sort of like purist ideology. I absolutely love it. And so that is like a huge actionable step. Please do that right now. And whilst you're doing that, I'm going to go into like a quick recap. If you miss anything, you can rewind. You can always come back here to listen to the recap, and it all kind of just summarize the entire video. So step one is going to be, measure your neck size. Take photos of your traps. Make some sort of goal. Make it really, really measurable. Something like, I want to gain an inch by this day. I want my traps to look 2 times bigger by this day. And then step two is just get 2 extension, 2 flexion exercises per week, and that'll be like total of 4 sets. So you give 2 sets to each essentially. If you really, really want, if you have the means to, if you have some sort of like harness you can attach, sure, do lateral flexion exercise. 1 set a week, 1 set. I don't care. You can't do more than that. I'm sorry. It's such a small muscle. There are so many better things when it comes to growing your physique than wasting time there. And of course, alongside that, when you get to 16 inches, just shift your focus. Completely forget about neck training. You're gonna keep it the size. All of this stuff needs good intensity, man. That is step 4. Make sure that the intensity is super high, but you've got sufficient warm up. You're not just trying to like actually tear the meat off the bone, because that would be absolutely stupid. And step 5 is make sure you're training your traps properly. Don't do shrugs. Shrugs are for thugs. I don't know if that's an insult or not, but don't do them. They're not going to get what you want. You're not going to look better. You're just going to stand in the gym doing some weird motion with your shoulders. It's not it. It really isn't it. So something that'd be super valuable to overall your training is actually a video I made explaining hypertrophy misconceptions using balloons. It's a really, really cool model, and it's going to be very useful to you. It makes it very, very easy to understand.